It's been a whole year, I think. Let me count. It's been more than a year since I've been here. So I'm back in Jamaica and I wanted to give an update on what it was like traveling during COVID to Jamaica a year later. So since my last video on this topic, I've traveled to 4 different cities within the United States, outside of the United States, and I thought Montego Bay or traveling to Montego Bay was the best by far. But this time around, it was extremely stressful, and I'm going to break down to you exactly why and how you can better prepare so you don't have to go through any of the stuff that I went through traveling to Jamaica this time around. So I hope that you're taking notes if you do plan on traveling to this beautiful country, because I still think that you should. It's open, it's clean. We do have curfew, but that's another story for another time. So I'm gonna go through the documentation that's required this time around, and then I'm gonna go through the process that I had to go through, which is very different from the first time that I came down to Jamaica during COVID. So first, let's talk about required documents. There's quite a bit, and if you don't have this documentation, they will not allow you to travel. They won't allow you to get your boarding pass. So that's another thing. So keep this in mind. You're going to need a negative COVID test, a COVID rapid test that you have to get 3 days in advance. I recommend doing it in 2, simply because when I got to the airport on my day that I was scheduled to travel, I ended up having to come back the next day due to some complications in our documentation. And had I gotten my COVID test 3 days prior, like they recommend, the 3rd day that I came back to the airport, my test would have been expired. So I would have had to gone and gotten another one. So I like to say give yourself 2 days prior to your travel date to get your test, just in case anything goes wrong on that 3rd day. That way, when you come back, if you have to come back the day after, you still have that, your test is still valid. I hope that makes sense. Next, you'll need your authorization barcode from the Jamaica government, signaling that you have the okay to travel to this country. It's as simple as going to gemcovid19.com. I'll put the link here down below as well. Pretty much you just fill out the questionnaire. You provide them with the fact that you've gotten your COVID test, and you should be good to go. Make sure you have that barcode when you come to the airport. I highly recommend printing out all your documents, because sometimes it will not work from your phone. We all know technology can be unreliable most of the time, so you want to make sure that you print all these documents out, even your COVID test results. And lastly, I know I shouldn't even have to say this, but you need your passport. Please do not forget that. Make sure that you pack that in your suitcase, and that's the first thing that you pack. Actually, don't put it in your suitcase, because then put it in your purse the week before your vacation, or your book bag, whatever you take on the plane with you, make sure it's there. Now let's talk about the process and the order in which everything needs to get done. So I mentioned getting your COVID test 2 days prior to your travel date rather than 3, to allow yourself an extra day of buffer time just in case you need it. And if you absolutely cannot do it 2 days prior, then 3 days is fine. If you can do it the day before, that's kind of pushing it, but that's also fine. Make sure you apply for the Jamaica authorization immediately after you get your COVID results for this application, because I believe that they will ask if you were positive or negative. Don't quote me on that, but you can figure it out as you go along. When you arrive to the airport, this is when you present all of your documentation. They're going to ask for your COVID test. They're going to ask for your barcode approving you to travel to Jamaica. You have to go through the line, so give yourself ample amount of time to move through the international line at whichever airport you're traveling from. I was traveling from Hartsfield, Atlanta International Airport, so the line was ridiculous. We got there 3 hours in advance the second day. The day before, we got there 2.5 hours in advance, and that still wasn't enough time for us to get through. You will have to go through the line. You can't check in on your own. You can try, but you're gonna have to check in with an attendant once you get to the airport. You have to have that boarding pass, because that's going to come into play later on in the process. So after you've gone through that initial check-in process at the front of the airport, you're now going to go through security, obviously, and then go to your gate. At your gate, they're going to ask for those 2 documents in addition to your passport, and they're going to use your boarding pass to verify that they've checked all 3 of those: your passport, your authorization barcode, code and your COVID test. So they're going to check it multiple times, but this is going to be the most important time. So make sure between check-in at the front gate and check-in after security, make sure you keep all of those documents with you. Otherwise, they will not let you on the plane. Even if you've gotten through all of that and you get to the main gate, they may not let you on the plane if you do not have those documents. So be sure to keep those. Once you have finally made it onto the plane and you are entering to Jamaica, obviously traveling pre-COVID, you still had to fill out your immigration papers, so make sure you do that. Once you exit the plane, in my previous video, I talked about all of the safety measures that they had where they had us take the test immediately at the airport, but now because it's required for you to come into the country, they no longer do that. They still have sanitization centers as soon as you exit the plane. They check your temperature. You cannot get past this, so don't even try. They will send you back home. So that safety measure is still there. They are no longer doing testing, so the process going through immigration and leaving the airport is much quicker than it was a year ago. Immigration did seem to take longer than usual, but I think that it's back to normal in a sense that previously we were doing the COVID test, so it was a little spread out, the amount of people that would be going through the immigration line. So just expect to be in immigration for up to 15 to 20 minutes. After immigration, you're free to grab your luggage and head off to wherever you're going to, and be sure to enjoy yourself while you're here, because I know that a lot of people have gone through a lot with COVID and they just want to let loose. This is definitely the place to come. Do keep in mind that if you're not staying on a resort, there is a curfew at the moment. I don't foresee it staying for long. For example, I'm not on a resort. I am in a house, in a regular neighborhood, in a city of Jamaica. So I have to abide by the curfew rules. Currently, weekend curfew, I believe, is 6 p.m. Weekday curfew is 8 p.m. But I believe on a resort, they don't necessarily have to abide by the curfew rules because it is a private, enclosed space. So keep that in mind if you are coming here for leisure and you're not staying on a resort. Just know that we do abide by the curfew rules and they are strictly enforced. Let's talk about going back home because this is important. I came down here with 2 of my family members and they had to go back to the States for work. What we were not aware of was that rapid testing is required to go back home to the United States. You have to have this done prior to your flight. I believe you can do it up to 2 days prior to going back home. If you decide to wait till the day of and you have a morning AM flight, good luck, because you may miss it and they do not care. So I do highly recommend that you get the test done prior, a day prior or 2 days prior to going back home. Present that when you go to check in for your flight and you'll be good to go. That's all you need is a negative COVID test to go back if you are flying back to the United States. If you're coming from any other area, the UK or wherever else, I don't know what the protocol is there, but I do know for the United States, you must have this negative COVID test to go back home. They will not let you on the plane and they do not care. And to end this all off, this is such a beautiful country to come to relieve stress and not add to it. So I hope that you've been able to get something from this video that you didn't know prior to traveling, prior to thinking about traveling here. Keep all of this in mind and I promise you'll have a great time. If you have any questions about any part of the process that I forgot to mention, please be sure to comment down below and I'll be sure to answer all your questions. Thank you guys so much for watching the first video on traveling to Jamaica during COVID. I know it was super helpful. So this is why I wanted to share an update video. A year later, everything is all good. We survived. So please be sure to have a great time and enjoy responsibly. Thank you.